So Barry from the Brewed Palate, living in New York. How's it going, sir?
It's going pretty well.
So you came onto the scene in the brewtuber scene like I don't know, kind of like a storm. Nobody really knew who you were or where you came from, and all of a sudden you had this guy that was asking for people to send them videos about why they do Homebrew Wednesdays and part of the brewtubing community. That was kind of pretty cool. So for those of you that are watching this and don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just going to go ahead and cut off here so you can check that out, and then we'll come right back.
Today, I declare Wednesdays as Homebrew Wednesday. So all you homebrewers out there, need to do your homebrew. Do a video of your homebrew. Absolutely.
My name's Tony Yates. I live now in Norway.
Hi, my name's Craig and I'm from Ontario, Canada.
I've been brewed here for about 4 to 5 years.
My name is Brad. My username is PookNC. I'm from North Carolina.
My real name is Clive, based here in the UK in the county of Norfolk, on the east coast of the UK.
Hey up, my name's Paul. I'm from Time for Another One. Brewtubing, what we do. We talk about beer online, on videos, help people out, do tutorials. Generally just sort of chat about what we've been brewing and what we've been making. And it's a great community, I love it.
I started shooting Homebrew Wednesday videos in 2011. It has really caught on, and I'm just glad to be part of it. I think it's great. You could watch, one video and learn how to do all grain the way that guy did it, or you can watch 20 videos of how to do all grain and get really the idea, okay, I get this. I see what he's doing differently than him, and you develop your own technique. It's nice to meet people. You kind of feel like you're meeting people when you see them on video, and then you can comment and communicate with them. And you can see their faces and hear their voices. It's so much nicer that way than just text, There just seems like there's just a lot of love.
Hello. My name is Brad. A lot of you know me as Elder P. I've met people all over the world. I'm friends with people I never would have met in any other way without this community, with this YouTube connection. And I've gotten to feel a real camaraderie with everyone. I mean, it's just, and the personalities, so many people have the same kind of, thinking, like mind. We are stronger than just the individuals. I mean, the sum of the whole is just, it's remarkable. And I'm just really grateful that I've gotten to know all these people around the world. We are truly blessed with the community we have. I don't know, feeling a little verklempt.
I think about a month or 2 months after starting watching videos, I started doing Homebrew Wednesdays. The first one was done just myself, just to kind of introduce myself, and then in episode 2 I bred on the Elder P. And enjoying it and having fun. We're going to continue to do that until we're not having fun anymore. But it's beer. It's a blast.
I don't mind if you Houston. It's between the state capital of Jefferson City and the state fairgrounds location, also known as Sedalia. I've been brewing quite a bit, probably the last 5 years, especially since I started getting on YouTube and watching the videos, and actually found out there's a whole community of people out there that was enjoying the same hobby that I had. What do I love about Homebrew Wednesday videos? I'd say for me it would be watching the people brew the things, or especially I really like watching people make things that they can use in their brewing days. You know, just take simple things and turn it into something completely different. Making wort chillers, you know, temperature controllers, things like that. I would say that's probably what I enjoy the most.
My own brewery, and here it is here. I set this up about a year ago, coming up to a year ago now. So that's my kettle, my filters for my water coming in, my heat exchanger stack, which takes care of heat transferring for the mash tun, and my HLT. And everything's all hard plumbed in and clear polycarbonate pipes and bits and pieces. So, and there's the control panel that runs it. So I think without Homebrew Wednesdays, this wouldn't have happened. Getting the feedback and getting the insights and learning from other people's mistakes, what they've done, has been great to help me actually put something together like this from scratch.
So come join us here in this YouTube homebrewing community. A great community full of passionate, like-minded homebrewers, all with the goal of brewing greater beer. Cheers to all the current members, and of course, cheers to you guys. Hopefully you'll join us soon in growing this amazing, passionate community. Cheers.
Enjoy the fruits of your labor, folks. Brew beer.
So Barry, what can you tell me that inspired you to create that sort of video?
Well, a big part of my love of homebrewing and craft beer is a sense of community. And I've experienced it, you know, for a while in New York City between my fellow homebrewers, my fellow craft beer drinkers, and then when I came onto YouTube, you know, when I bought my new equipment that you guys have seen and started, you know, finding more and more and more brew tubers, I'm like, wait, you know, I need to tell everybody about this stuff. Like through, you know, and then when I did actually tell people about it at my homebrew shop, they had no clue who we were. So I'm like, you know what? Let me ask people for videos. I'll, you know, splice together a really cool promo video and pass it around, and hopefully that will attract more, you know, more people, not just from New York, but from all over, whoever gets to see it, you know, to join us or at least subscribe to our channels to, you know, to be able to benefit from the resources that we provide through our videos.
Right, so that's very cool. And then you got like a pretty good response from that too. So almost everyone I know in the community went ahead and gave you a little video telling you about themselves and stuff, and you took that, stitched it together, and we just saw that, so that was great.
At one point I was wondering if I could like try to match up all the rest of them that I didn't get to use, but it's been a while, so maybe at some point I'll just do like a revamped version of it with more like different people, or, you know, a part 1 and 2, just to see if I can include more people that I feel like promoting as part of, you know, showing what we're all about.
Oh, that's pretty cool. How many did you not use?
A lot. I probably got like 25 to 30, and I was only able to use like 8, just because I wanted to keep it, you know, between 5 and 8 minutes. Sometimes they came out to like 7. So, you know, just in the interest of time, because, you know, you want to keep everybody's attention who's watching it. So I basically was able to splice it together in a way that kind of told the story. Like, you know, promoted that we're all from all over the world, and then what makes us such an awesome community.
So speaking about community, so you're like the one and only out of New York City. That's kind of hard to believe.
Right. Yep.
Because if you talk to your local homebrew shop, the guys that sort of you were handing this off to, and they never heard of us, I find that pretty hard to believe because, like so many of us, the first thing that we did whenever we said, you get it in your mind, I want a homebrew. And the first place you go to and think about, how do you homebrew, you go to Google, you search, and that naturally leads you to YouTube.
Right. I'm sure a few people found Craig too, but and people like that, and SJ maybe Paul from Time for Another One, but I don't know how many of them really delved as deep as they could have to really, discover the breadth of the community. Like the fact that this Homebrew Wednesday thing was gigantic. So, but you never know, like how many people at one point watched a few videos to set up their equipment, and then once they got that and discovered the local scene, they just only checked YouTube, on occasion. So, I keep giving my card out at, with my blog information, my YouTube channel, at every time I go to another homebrewing event, just to make sure that people know and are aware. And I say, yeah, go on YouTube, search Homebrew Wednesday, you'll find a ton of videos, and I'm sure you won't regret it. So, the more we tell people about it in our local scenes, the more people will know.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking about local scenes, I mean, New York City is huge. So what's it like being in New York City and the craft brew movement there?
I didn't think of it this way until I interviewed Ben Weiss from the brewery. He said, because he's the marketing guy there, that New York City is a tap-based city. There are some really good bottle shops, more and more have opened over the past, let's say, 2-3 years. But there's tons of beer bars everywhere you go. There's new ones opening. You'd think there's enough, but there's another one popping up in a different neighborhood or right a few blocks away from the next one. So there's never a shortage of craft beer on tap or in bottle. And more West Coast breweries are now coming on board and taking the leap to come into such a tap-based, city, because they have to send more and more kegs. It's not they're sending cases of bottles to the distributor. They have to send this keg and another keg and another, and they have to be able to keep up with the demand because there's a shit ton of beer bars, which is great. But it just scared. Like it took Bell's and some other breweries a ton of years to get here because they didn't want to take that leap yet.
That sort of brings me up to the question I was thinking about in my mind was all these, tap bars that are around New York City, are they like local shops that brew their own beer, or do they host a lot of taps or, from kegs from other breweries?
New York City actually isn't so friendly to brew pubs where they brew there. There's only maybe like a handful or a little more of those. But now there's a lot of nano breweries opening up. So those are more like brew pubs because they, on the weekends they're open with their tap room and they have food trucks come in and it's like a brew pub atmosphere. But there's only like a handful of actual like restaurant/breweries or brew pubs that are official brew pubs. Usually, they're just like a normal beer bar with, food and, anywhere from 10 to 70 taps based on where you are.
And these taps are like anything from Bell's Two Hearted to Maharaja or Hop Slam, sort of on occasion.
To Bourbon County, to whoever distributes here, and like the list of breweries that distribute here is growing by leaps and bounds every year. Like Ninkasi from Oregon just joined us a few weeks ago, so that's exciting because they brew some really good IPAs and other styles. So I'm excited, to start getting them. But I've tried some of their beers, in trades, but now, I'm trading a lot less, I find, because I can get a lot of the beers I would have traded for in New York now. So
that's good.
So like a win-win situation. But and then in terms of home brewing, you guys will see it in the video because Tony can't see it on Uvu, but I'm wearing my New York City Homebrewers Guild T-shirt, and they're the oldest homebrew club in New York City. They're about 27 years old, and they're basically the umbrella for everybody, because now basically every borough in New York City has its own club or clubs, based on, if they have like a different neighborhood that they want to start a club in. But the New York City Homebrewers Guild kind of brings everybody together, and people who are members of clubs in their own borough still, we kind of stagger the meetings throughout the month so that they don't conflict. So if you, let's say I'm part of also the Bronx Homebrewers Club because I live close to the Bronx, so we meet the second Tuesday of every month, and then the New York City Homebrewers Guild meets the third Tuesday of every month. So we kind of schedule it in a way where no matter what club you're a part of, you can still come to the New York City Homebrewers Guild meeting, because that's really where you get, the big news of what competitions are going on in the area, and whatever.
So it's like the melting pot.
Right. And then on top of that, I also go to the first Wednesday of the month. I go to my local homebrew shop called Bitter and Esther's, and I go, and they have a bottle swap there. So, I always try to, if I can't make one meeting, I'll go to the other. So there's always something for me to go to, which is really good. And but the only problem is that both of the better homebrew shops that I could get to, because I don't have a car in New York City, so the easiest ones to get to are all the way down in Brooklyn. So either way, I'm traveling an hour or more to get my ingredients and then taking the subway home. But, it's worth the trip for me, because every time I go there, I get to like chat up with our fellow homebrewers and, maybe taste some beer they have on tap at the store. So
how long have you been homebrewing?
So I started officially, I guess, when I graduated college in 2009. But it was very sporadic, because I never really had my own all grain equipment. So I was brewing a bunch of partial mash every few months, and then I started brewing with a friend of mine who has a house in Brooklyn. But it really wasn't until I really came onto the BrewTube scene in this about a year ago, to where I really got married, bought my own 10-gallon all grain equipment. Now I'm brewing more consistently, so I feel like I almost started from scratch when I got the new equipment, because not only did I have to learn the new equipment, but I really had to learn how to manage, trying all these new recipes and always having something going, instead of say, okay, I'll brew now when my friend's available, and then a few months from now when our schedules work, we'll brew again. So now I've really been able to take off and really know that I'm never going to stop, because I have my own equipment.
Now, you've built up quite a bit of equipment, right? I mean, you started off on one big purchase, got pretty much everything you needed, and now you're all the way into having your own fermentation chamber. So what's next in the pipeline?
Right. The next is two things I want to do, hopefully by the end of the summer. My birthday is last year I used some of my birthday money and wedding money to buy some of the initial stuff. So my birthday is at the end of the summer. So, at the end of August. So, depending on, how much money I save up between now and then whatever money I get for my birthday, I want to start kegging. Just get like maybe a 7 cubic foot chest freezer, put like 3 kegs and a 5-pound CO2 tank, in there. Just because, bottling is okay. I'm not like one of those people who like despises it, but like, I don't want to, it'll cut 2 weeks at least off every brew, and I'll be able to brew more often because I won't have to wait those 2 weeks to try to see how it came out. And also, I might do what Colorado Fly Fisherman does and have 2 like college-sized fridges for fermenting, because like, I could buy a second chest freezer or an upright one like you have. Like that fridge that you cold crash in. But if let's say, because I brew a lot of different styles, I'm always brewing like a triple and then a black IPA and then a saison and this. So if I have 2 different small fridges, each of which can fit, a carboy, a 6-gallon carboy, then I could, have each one be temperature controlled, but according to style.
Yeah, that's smart.
So that's really, So that's really like the grand scheme. It shouldn't be too expensive to get like a cheap mini fridge, and convert it the way I did the other one, and then the big purchase will be the kegging part.
Now, you've got some of your beers out there in the SJ Pour Challenge, and so far from the feedback I've seen, you've gotten some pretty good reviews on those beers.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. Well, we had like a high attrition rate in our region, so we went from like 14 down to 9. So, you know, in the end, I was kind of bummed in the beginning, but, you know, I've tried some pretty good beer so far. You know, it's been a cool experience to really take what I think is a really developed palate, and really pick apart other people's beers. And like, I think that there was a decent amount of flaws in my beer, things I could have done differently, things that went wrong on brew day. But overall, I've gotten really good scores. So, you know, I was kind of blown away by like someone gave me a 49 out of 50, and I've gotten a 40 out of 50 and 38s, and my lowest score is a 33, which is still, according to BJCP, pretty decent. So,
Congratulations.
You know, and everyone who's tried the beer at the so everyone at the meetings I've gone to, also I brought it to the bottle share this week, and then last week to the Homebrewers Guild meeting, and everyone seemed to think it was pretty good. So, you know, because it was my first time brewing the recipe and my first time tweaking the water with gypsum, I'm like, okay, you know, I have something going here. Like, I'll tweak this, I'll tweak that, you know, and hopefully brew day will go more smooth next time, and then hopefully I'll be kegging by the next time I brew it, so I'll just be able to enjoy it on tap, you know.
So what was it specifically that you did brew, and what tweaks do you think you want to make to it?
So I brewed, it's called Self-Righteous Wookie, which I took from Homebrew Talk, the clone recipes for Stone Sublimely Self-Righteous and Firestone Walker Wookie Jack, which are my two favorite black IPAs. And actually, they're both Imperial black IPAs. So Wookie Jack has rye, so I used the rye in the Midnight Wheat from there. You know, I used, you know, Chinook hops and Amarillo and Simcoe from the Sublimely. I used Citra, you know, the Citra from the Wookie Jack, you know, and then I added some El Dorado hops, which, you know, I had in my freezer from Yakima Valley hops. That I'm like, you know what? I've tried these in an IPA. I remember from Ballast Point, they had a double IPA that was all El Dorado, and I really liked it. So I'm like, you know what? I'll throw those in to put my own twist on things.
There's your wild card.
Yeah. So to tweak it, like I had like a kind of mash out fiasco where I put too much hot water and it was too hot, and then I put too much cold water, it was too cold. And, you know, I tried to add more hot water and it didn't really work. So I was mashing for a lot longer than, you know, it ended up being like a 2-hour mash or more, you know, in the state of confusion I was in and then when I was talking with Puka and C afterwards, like, oh yeah, you could just take out some of the, you know, Vorloff, take out some of the runnings, bring them up to a boil, and then add it back in slowly but surely. But, you know, so next time, you know, hopefully my mash out will go a little smoother, and I think I'll get, you know, an overall smoother malt. Everyone likes the malt profile, but I want to see how it tastes when nothing goes wrong. Yeah. All right, so the next tweak, which will probably be the final tweak. I might tweak the malt profile a tiny bit, nothing too significant, but they back off on the Midnight Wheat a little bit. Okay, so the next tweak, which I feel is going to make the biggest difference, is that the hop flavor kind of and aroma kind of faded pretty quickly. I mean, it's still there now after being in the bottle almost, you know, a little over a month and a half. But I think it faded too quickly. So I'm going to tweak the bittering hops and add another flavor. Like, you know, I really only did like a bittering, a 20-minute addition, a huge flame out addition, Whirlpool, and then a shit ton of dry hops. So I think I'm gonna like lessen the 20-minute addition, add a 10-minute addition just to reinforce, give more flavor, and maybe even cool the beer down to like 180, and then add the flame out hops then, just to give more flavor than bitterness to the beer. Yeah. And it should be pretty good. And then the dry hopping, I did like the Firestone Walker, like double dry hop, where you dry hop for 3 or 4 days, and then transfer it to another ferment, the secondary, with another bunch of hops for another 3-4 days. But so I might do that again, but I'm thinking of just doing it all once and seeing if that makes an even better aroma. But we'll see. But I might also, I don't know, but I tried a really good IPA at the Bottle Share that John Palmer actually brewed when he was in New York in May.
Yep.
And with the water adjustments that he did, like the Citra flavor was like off the charts. But I have to be careful with a black IPA with tweaking the water because the darker grains already mess with the pH.
Yep.
And so like you have to be very careful how much salts you add because it could throw off. And that might have, the fact that I added gypsum to the boil might have also affected it. So I might have to steer clear of the gypsum with the black IPA just to make sure that I don't lose any of the hops because the pH is off.
So the way that you're talking about it, it doesn't seem like you were checking the pH during your mashing process or after the boil. So I think you got a new kit, right? For evaluation?
Yeah, so I got the water testing. Yeah, so now before I brew on Sunday, I'm going to calibrate the new pH meter, and because like a really advanced one that came with the kit. And so I'll calibrate it maybe today or tomorrow or whatever. And then, so by Sunday, I'll be able to take the match pH. And I have, some baking soda, which is sodium bicarbonate, which you could use to adjust. Maybe I'll get some Epsom salt, whatever, so I can adjust if I need to. But overall, New York City water is pretty soft and neutral, so it shouldn't really be, make the mash pH too low or too high. So we'll see. But now that I have the pH meter, and it's digital and it's more accurate than maybe like one of those litmus papers, whatever. I'll be able to make sure that whatever style I brew is on the money in terms of that. But I was so surprised with the John Palmer IPA because, like they said, they used some UK hops, and then the main hop they wanted to highlight was Citra, and I've never with Citra you get some citrus, some peach, some apricot, stone fruits, but this IPA was so balanced in terms of bitterness, and the peach and apricot were you were actually eating the ripest apricot and peach you've ever tasted in your life in a beer, and it was mind blowing. So the more I try beers that have tweaked water and think about doing it myself, it gets me more excited to really try new things.
So what did he say about what contributed to that? I mean, obviously they don't even introduce the hops until they get them in the kettle. So obviously he was focused on measuring pH in the mash tun. And I also measure mash pH in the boil kettle as well. But did he, key in on any of the hopping technique that he used for that beer?
Well, he wasn't there when I was tasting the beer, obviously, because it was ready after he had left New York. But one of the owners was telling me he looked at the water profile of New York City that they had printed out for him. And he's like, okay, this much, he calculated how much he needed of each thing, not only to adjust the pH, but also to highlight the hop character, because some of the salts, especially gypsum, bring out the hop character, and in pale ales and IPAs especially. So I guess he tweaked the water to not only to make the pH and water chemistry perfect, so that the hops would contribute more of their flavor and brightness and actual harsh bitterness.
Okay, was there a destination water profile that he was targeting? What was the target water profile? That would be my question. I
don't know, because that would be my question to him. But to me, it didn't have the sharp bitterness of a West Coast IPA. So because it was so juicy and balanced bitterness, that it was really the hop flavor and not the bitterness, that bitter bite you get off a Stone Ruination or whatever. And it really was just this one of those double IPAs that was just like juicy as all hell. Like you would like, drink it and you like would think you were just drinking like a fruit cocktail almost.
And what about
So
dry hopping? Was it just all kettle additions, or was there some dry hopping?
no, they dry hopped in the keg.
Okay.
So yeah. So that might have also contributed to the aroma and the flavor too. But I was just like, again, it was the flavor of the hops, the juiciness, the fact that you could actually taste the fruit itself, and not it's like, oh, I think it tastes like peach and apricot. No, you were actually like biting into one.
Nice.
Yeah.
So are you gonna try and brew that up here in the sometime future?
Maybe. I have to see what other hops they use besides Citra, because I actually recently put together a quick Citra IPA recipe just because I was like thinking about it at work, and I'm like, oh, let me pull out my Beersmith app and just put together a recipe, and maybe at some point I'll brew it. So I probably use like, you know, a more neutral bittering hop like Warrior or Columbus, whatever, and then use all Citra, and it wouldn't be a smash because I would use like other malts just to like accent the fruitiness of the Citra.
Sure.
But we'll see. Like I have all these recipes, but you know, but we'll see. But another exciting beer that I'm going to be brewing soon, beyond my saison, which is also exciting for many reasons, is at the bottle share that we're talking about. They did like pick from the hat collaborations where everyone who was interested put their name in a hat, and one of the owners named John would pick two people and they'd collaborate. I mean, you don't have to participate, but if you don't want to, but even if you got picked, but I got picked with the president of the Staten Island Club, who I'm already friends with.
Uh-huh.
So we're gonna brew an oatmeal we're gonna brew an oatmeal brown ale on his 10-gallon system at some point in the next few weeks.
Oh, cool.
So like something like Cigar City's Maduro brown ale, something like that. That's our inspiration. Yeah, my saison should be pretty darn exciting.
Didn't you just show some yeasts on Facebook that you were going to be using in that saison?
Okay, so for this saison, it's basically last summer I brewed a partial mash version of this rye saison, which was basically a kit that I bought from another homebrew shop called Brooklyn Homebrew, and I just switched out some of the hops and switched the yeast to like make it my own. I mean, it came out really pretty good. It didn't attenuate down as far as it should have, so I added some bottle bombs, but now I know better to, you know, I have temperature controlled fridge, I can ramp up the temp.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to brew an all grain version of that with like a few tweaks to the malt bill to brew it all grain and just get the character I want. And then I bought yeasts from a company called the Yeast Bay, which is getting started now. They've only been on the market for like 4 or 5 months. And they do all the propagating at White Labs. So it comes in like the White Labs vials, as you saw in the picture.
Yeah.
So they have 2 saison blends. So I just picked one, and you know, because I like the way they described it, and I'll use that for my primary strain. And then, you know, as I said in my Homebrew Wednesday, I'm splitting the batch into the 2 3-gallon better bottles that I bought, and one is going to be just the base beer, and one is going to be with Brett Bruck's or WLP 650, and 6 pounds of dried apricots, or about, depending on, I'll see how much beer I collect, and then I'll know if I need to put, you know, the full, you know, 6 pounds. I'm doing a 2 pound per gallon ratio of dried apricots, and then aging it with the Brett for about 6 to however many months it takes.
Yeah, you've already got my mouth watering. I want to taste it.
Yeah, so there's actually a new brewery, and one of the newest breweries in New York City called Transmitter Brewing, which is big on like farmhouse ales, and they've made all their own like little cultures of Brett and different bugs, and they're always experimenting. So I'm looking forward to having them try it once it's ready, because their beers are pretty awesome.
So let's talk a little bit about your blog. So the Brewed Palate. I remember the first time I rolled across that blog, I was like, there's this guy. He's in New York. He's writing about beer. Seems to like beer a little bit. He's interviewing all very well-known brewers around the city.
Right.
And that was pretty cool. Now, when you did when I saw the interview you did with Garrett Oliver, I had no idea who Garrett Oliver was. You know, he doesn't fit sort of your stereotype for your typical brewmaster.
Right.
And then it wasn't until I read the Brewmaster's Table that I, really got the full breadth of Garrett and his experience and travels and capabilities and just profession. So it was a whole new level of respect reading that book.
Right.
That was pretty cool. So you've got to interview quite a few popular guys. That's pretty great. I mean, how do you feel about that?
In general, that's one of the perks of living in New York City, because every time, any brewer from any popular brewery, or any brewery for that matter, that it makes an East Coast trip or Northeast trip, they usually 90% of the time stop in New York at some point. I used to have a blog called craftbrewadvocate.com, which I took down just because I needed to concentrate on grad school. But so for years, since 2009, I've been, in the craft beer scene in New York, meeting brewers when they come in, and, even though I don't have that old blog anymore, when I see them, we just catch up, because, when you have that, an awesome craft beer drinking experience with someone, you can really easily rekindle that feeling when you're in the same situation. So, it's been pretty easy no brewer has really ever turned me down. You just have to, wait for them to show up at the event, let them settle in, let them know that you want to interview them. And then if they have time, which in most cases they do, then you pull them over, outside or somewhere quiet in the bar and film the interview. So I've known Garrett Oliver for, it seems like for 5 or 6 years, because he's, the local superstar. So from the time I got into social media in 2009, I got myself onto the press list at Brooklyn Brewery. So every time they have a Brewmaster Reserve Series beer release, they have like a big event, usually on Monday night from like 7 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. And you go, if you can make it, you go. You RSVP, and you bring a guest. Or, sometimes I bring my wife, sometimes I bring a friend. And you go there for like 3 hours, and you chat with Garrett Oliver and Steve Hindy, the founder of the brewery, and whoever else is there, some of the brewers. Sometimes you get to walk around the brewery, and just and try whatever, their staple beers and the special beer that's been released, and whatever other one-offs they have on tap at the tap room. So, I've gotten to know Garrett, over the years. He's an awesome guy, and then at one point which is probably the interview you saw, he was at a bar in my neighborhood called Buddha Beer Bar, which is like 2 or 3 years old, which has 24 pretty good taps rotating really nicely. And I'm like, you know what, I'll walk over, because it's a 5-minute walk from my apartment, and, just, catch up with him, have a few beers and film an interview. So, and now, one of the things we talked about in that interview, the Brooklyn Blast being bottled, it's actually been bottled since then, and it's awesome to be able to have that double IPA that I used to always get on tap.
I had that 2 weeks ago.
In the bottle now. Yeah, it's really good, right?
They had it here in Norway, actually. Had no idea. Let's just try this one. So when it comes and you were taking a break from the blog and focusing on your education, what are you studying?
Well, I graduated already. I got a master's in social work, and now I'm a full-time social worker at a homeless shelter in the Bronx. So it's a pretty tough job. So, coming home to my home brewing and my blog and craft beer in the fridge, whatever, it was a really good outlet just to sit, decompress, and go from one extreme of my job to the extreme awesome, hobby where you delve, just your mind can go off of work and right into beer and, and have fun and not have to worry about work until the next day.
So when you're not thinking about beer, what are you doing? And you're not at work?
I also play the drums, so I don't have a drum set in my apartment, obviously, because it'd be too loud, but I also play percussion, so I have some hand drums around my apartment that I play with friends, or just, to practice. I'll put on my headphones and my iPod and just, practice a little bit here and there. I have my drum pad here, so I'll keep my skills up with that.
Nice.
So with a lot of things, like, I've always been a very creative person in general. Before I got into drumming in 8th grade, I used to draw a lot when I was a kid, and my parents really, liked that I was really creative, because my mom is also a very creative person. So they really always encouraged me to express my creativity. I mean, they're not really into the beer thing. My parents are more wine people, but they let me, get into craft beer, and me and my brothers are into it. They like that. My brothers and I are, as we get older, still spending a lot of time together, because we all like craft beer. So
So obviously they have not read
win-win.
the Brewmaster's Table.
No, not yet. That was actually, I think that was actually probably the first beer book I ever bought, was that book.
Mm-hmm. And you've read it.
And I've read it.
Yeah.
Actually, I have it right here. So I actually, after I had already done it, when I first interviewed Garrett Oliver for my first blog, at a different bar, I brought the book down and I had him sign it. So
awesome.
I have my signed copy
That's
of
fantastic.
the Brewmaster's Table here. So yeah. So he's a really awesome guy, and I see why you like the book. If you meet him in person and like chat up about stuff, he's always so worldly, because he's always traveling, and teaching cooking classes and brewing classes all over the world. So he's really, the head of brewing there. He brews there, when he's in New York, but he's always, spreading the gospel of good food and good beer all over the world. So he's really a role model to everyone in craft beer, basically.
Nice. So you've had a lot of experience with tasting a lot of different craft brews. So do you have a favorite?
It really depends on the season, because, like, as I find that, like, in the winter, I'll drink a lot of heavy beers, but then I need like an IPA or something to like keep my palate fresh. And then over the past couple of years, actually, in the summers, I've used to drink a lot of Hefeweizens, but now I'm a huge saison fan. So, like, my favorite summer style is a saison, but it's hard to pick a favorite, because it's like I always have so much available to me. So it's really whatever I'm drinking at the point. Like, my favorite, I had my most recent Homebrew Wednesday, the First and Walker Pivo Pils, which is like a hoppy German Pilsner, and like, it's like, I need to go buy more now. Like, every time I drink it, I'm like, this is such a perfect refresher. It's like, I can just like session that like all night. So really, since I've tried over 1,500 craft beers, and have this developed palate, it's really just what I'm in the mood for at the time. I could drink an Imperial Stout in the summer if I really want to.
Right.
I haven't had one yet since it started getting really hot, but I have plenty in my apartment, so we'll see what happens. That's what the Brewed palate is about. It's just like, sharing my adventures, with my palate to everybody. And now home brewing happens to be like my biggest focus, but I'm always drinking craft beer, so I want to kind of, hopefully, now that I'm really settled into my Homebrew Wednesdays and my new equipment, I'll be bringing more of that, onto YouTube and onto the blog.
So you're really liking the saisons, and you're going to be doing that next for your homebrew.
Right.
And you also like sour beers as well, is that right?
That is right.
The saisons are sort of like a
sour.
gateway to the dark side, the sours. Puka and C's been infected with that disease, and then
Right.
other people.
Yeah.
It's starting to spread. It's
Right. I mean, my like in terms of Puka, but in terms of brew tubers in general, I find that like not everybody's branching out enough. I always keep seeing the next IPA and the next clone of this IPA and this IPA and this hoppy beer, one after the next, and occasionally they'll try something else. But for me, since the Brewed Palate, always trying different styles, different types of beer, I'm always brewing another. I'm not going to brew an IPA and then another IPA. I'll brew an IPA or a black IPA and then a saison. So with the sour beers though.
It's true what you're saying, because I know like it's a handful of guys that are doing different things. For example, Jason Toes is a really good example up in Canada.
Right.
Every time he shows a Homebrew Wednesday, it's something completely different. And then another one would be Jason Davies. He's always brewing something a little bit different. He's some Belgian beers, big beers. He likes his big beers, but they're always different.
In terms of Puka NC, where he brews a ton of IPAs and double IPAs, I'm really proud of him for brewing a saison, and then he has in his fridge the Roeselare blend from East to brew a sour at some point. So in terms of my opinion on sours, is which I hope to start a Solera Flemish oat brewing at some point this summer. With the help of Dan ABA, who's also helped me with my saison, is that there's basically three extremes of flavor in beer, which craft beer drinkers gravitate towards. There's the really hoppy, there's the really malty, and then the sour, which is like the new big thing.
Which is
it's been around for hundreds of years.
Which is 3 of the 4 basically flavors on your tongue, which is bitter, sweet, and sour, and then there's saltiness.
Right, which you can get from a Goza if you want to. But so I've always, I've never really been turned off by sours. As I got into craft beer, my palate developed. My palate was, I guess, more ready to acclimate the next extreme of flavor, or next new flavor combo in a beer. So I've always liked sours. I just haven't brewed one yet. But I definitely, now that I'm doing my first foray with Brettanomyces, the Brett Brooks, I definitely want to, get some oak cubes or an oak spiral, soak it in wine, brew a nice English brown ale to get some nice fruity esters, and then throw it with, the Roeselare blend or another sour blend and the oak, and then age it for a year, and start building up different, things with a Solera if I can.
Now, like the old brewing, that's a pretty advanced style. So it's nice to be able to sort of stretch your limits out there and grow as a home brewer. I think that's pretty important too.
Right. I mean, I could brew like a general sour, blonde ale, and Solera it like Dan ABA does, but I find that the sours and the funky beers that really blow me away on a regular basis is either the Oud Bruins, the Flemish Reds, and whatever the darker sours. So I feel that if I'm gonna get into the sours, I'm gonna my first one will be one that that I myself can build it to where it's somewhere on par with like a Rodenbach Grand Cru or Russian River Consecration. The darker colored sours that have a decent dark fruit flavor mixed in, and maybe even a caramel flavor mixed in with the with the funk and the sour tart flavors that you would get from a sour.
Something to knock your socks off.
Exactly. So you're always taking a chance, no matter if you're brewing a blonde ale with an oak spiral thrown in or a Flemish red. That's why I'm gonna brew a base beer and make sure the base beer tastes good instead of just brewing the beer and throwing it into a fermenter with the bugs right away. I want to make sure that the base is spot on, has the esters I want, and has residual sweetness for the bread and the bugs to work on. And once I nail down that good base, you know, I can drink an English brown ale if it doesn't come out good. You know, I can't drink a sour ale that goes all band-aidy and disgusting. I'd have to brew another one, wait for it to age, and then blend it in to balance it out. So, you know, that's why like Lost Abbey has a beer called Red Poppy, which is their Flemish red, and their base is an English brown ale. So and I really like that beer, so that's what gave me the idea to do it this way. But so you know, I'm trying to like go about things in like the best way possible, especially when you're trying something so chancy like a sour.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to just brew what you like, right? I mean, that's important.
Right, and also I should note that, you know, when I ask a lot of craft brewers, like every brewery has their philosophy on beer and what drives their beer. And most of them can't really pinpoint one thing. It's that they always say, oh, first and foremost, we're brewing the beer that we want to drink. So, yeah, you know, if you're a brew tuber or a home brewer that loves hoppy beer, of course you're going to brew a ton of hoppy beers. But if you like other styles too, you know, you should try, if you have the ability to always be brewing different styles. Just, it'll help your brewing skills, number one, first and foremost, and then in terms of your palate, it'll get you paying more attention to things. Because I found out, like with the SJ Pour thing, some people's videos, or even when people try other people's beers on video, they're like, "Oh, I'm not a good taster. I can't really pick things out." Right. But the more attention you pay to the ingredients you're using in your beers, and the more attention you pay to those nuances, the easier it'll become. It'll instinctually, oh, I can taste this right away, I can taste that, here's this off flavor, here's that off flavor. And of course home brewing helps you with off flavors too, because you're not going to always brew your beer perfectly and you'll get a touch of an off flavor. But just in general, the more attention you pay to your palate and keep up the variety with the beers you drink and brew, the easier it is to say, you don't have to say I'm not an amateur taster. You say, I'm still learning, but I'm always open to trying something new and open to that new experience, which is part of the beauty of the SJ Pour Challenge.
You think that maybe some people are just sort of intimidated because they maybe haven't read or they don't understand that there are only 5 different basic instincts on your tongue that you can taste, right? So it's the sweet, the sour, the salty, and
the bitter.
Of course, the most important, the bitter. And also there's another one as well.
The umami.
Yes, the umami, thank you. And so there's that.
What you get that one in like some imperial stouts and barley wine. It's like with aged malty beers, you get the umami flavor. But
doesn't that come from? It's a Japanese sort of orientation and something to do with the fish.
It's almost like a fishy or like mushroom type. It's not one thing or another. It's like a very it's more savory than anything else.
Okay, and then so there's that aspect of it. So what your tongue can sort of detect, those sort of things. And then the disconnect between understanding flavors, which actually come from your olfactory senses. It's more your sense of smell.
Right.
Your tongue gets the sensations, and then your olfactory senses get those scents that will distinguish whether it's raspberry, or orange, or citrus, or tropical, or piney, or fruity, those sort of things. And then I don't know, maybe it's just people are sort of intimidated by that sort of flavor wheel aspect of it.
Right, but it's also, it takes time. Like, your palate, you're not going to automatically be a hophead or automatically love big beers. Mm-hmm. So, like, even if you get into craft beer, like, let's say you're at the point now, which a lot of BrewTubers are at, where they've tried a lot of beers, they know kind of what they like from a different beers, but it's also about memory. Like, it's intimidating. The intimidating part, in my opinion, is like, oh, I don't want to, I can experience it and say it's a good beer, but I can't really put words to what I'm tasting.
Right.
So
I know I've tasted that before. I know there's a name for it. It escapes me at the moment.
Right. So that's what those people would have to work on, is putting a name to the taste, so that when they describe it, it's a little easier. But in general, a way to just develop your palate is just keeping up the variety of flavors, so that your memory for that last saison that you tried that you really liked, then the next time you drink another saison, whether it's on tap or you brew it or whatever, then you say, okay, I like that about the last saison. It had a little bit of spiciness, a little bit of tartness, whatever it had in it, and I liked X, Y, and Z. And then when you go to the next example of the style, then you say, okay, this has this that I like, but it doesn't have that. So the more you explore, keep that memory of the experience also is important, not just the flavor part. It's also the memory of what you liked and didn't like. And then you could apply that to the next beer. And, if you need to take notes, like us homebrewers like to have Beersmith or a brew journal, which I just started writing down my notes in, just to have a written version, brewer's log for myself, then do that. Or if you have Untapped, make sure to always write something as a comment when you check into a beer. But, it's all really about the effort. Like it's intimidating, because there's so much variety, so many flavors. But if you know what you like, that's the starting point. Say I like X, Y, and Z about one version of the style, and then when I brew a beer, I want to try to capture that. Or when I try another beer from that style on tap, I want to see if that's there, and if not, what do I like and not like about the next beer. So it's really, it's how you carve out what works for you in developing your own personal palate. You don't have to be the best at it, but...
One thing that I really liked was, I remember watching a Homebrew Wednesday by Kevin and Christian Clements, and they went ahead and bought a big sort of bag of variety of things that people can associate with tastes you find in beers. So Kevin likes a lot of dark beers, and so he bought a lot of sort of dates and prunes, different dark fruits and raisins and things like that. So they were experimenting with that. They were also tasting some dried apricots, possibly some dried mangoes, things like that, in order to tune your palates, or to exercise that memory muscle, those tastes associated with the taste you might find in a beer. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a nice exercise. Probably one of the first I've seen from anybody in the Homebrew Wednesdays community doing it. I'm sure it's not the first, but the first one that sort of talked about it. So, and I find myself, I went out and did the same thing after I saw it, because I was like, it was like sort of a little bit of an epiphany at that point. So I thought that was great.
From my standpoint, that's definitely a very good way to train your palate. Especially if you're like, I'm a foodie, so like I'm always cooking. I cook and I bake and whatever, which contributes to also part of my creative nature. So I already have a lot of basis for what I taste in the beer, because I'm always cooking new things. And I've never been a picky eater either. But definitely, if you like, let's say you gravitate towards IPAs even from the beginning, you can't pick out, those. Oh, you're the person next to you say, well, I can taste mango and peach and grapefruit, but you can't really. You say I like it, but I can't say it's that. And the next day, go to the supermarket, buy a mango, and just taste it and see. It's also important when you try those fruits that for them to be like really ripe, because there's a difference between an unripe or semi-ripe mango and a really juicy, really ripe mango. So it's definitely important if you're tasting fresh fruit that it has to be ripe, because a lot of the flavors that you'll get in the beer, especially if it's a well-brewed, really juicy IPA, you'll get like the ripe fruit flavor and not the semi-ripe or fresh off the freshly stocked supermarket shelf, not really ripe taste. So, it's like we've been saying, it's not really as complicated. It's only as complicated as you make it. It's only as intimidating as you make it. Beer is a very craft beer homebrewing is very approachable nowadays. You know, there's always a bartender at a bar or a bottle shop owner that's willing to give you suggestions. There's always websites to look at. There's the brewtubing community to help you get into homebrewing, from Craig Tube's intro to all his introductory videos from kits, or starting from the base, the bare bones basics, and then all grain brewers like us. You know, so it's very approachable. So instead of being intimidated, just to start from the bare basics, and then over time you'll find out what works for you to make sure that you're developing your palate in a way that you can be proud of. At the end of the day, like once you've brewed your 10th batch or tried your 500th craft beer, by that point, you know, you'll say, yeah, I've gotten this far, and I kind of discovered, you know, how much farther I can go from here.
Now, it sounds like early on you did this already, but I found myself, it was only after I started homebrewing and then really got into it, and then trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to brew to expand my horizons in the future. So then I started going to the liquor store over here and looking for beer styles that I'd never tasted before. And then so like once a month or something, I'd go pick up 2 or 3 beers of styles that I've never had. And that sort of started to broaden the horizons, not just in my own associations with what was in a specific beer or the beers I liked, but what was in the beers that I didn't like.
Right. I mean, so for me, you know, like I've been saying, it was all the way around. But the first, because when I first got back to America after spending 1.5 years, almost 2 years in Israel, trying, you know, a few Belgians and Germans and British beers, I still tried a lot of crappy beers, you know, just to say I've tried them all and I know which ones I could grab if I really needed a cheap beer and there was nothing else around. Yeah. But the first style that I grabbed a hold of and like explored its full potential, I guess, was wheat beers. So I tried, you know, Hefeweizens, Dunkelweizens, Weizenbachs, you know, all of them, especially because one of my first craft beer epiphanies was the Franziskaner Dunkelweiss. I was at a bar and I had a bottle of it and I was like blown away. So, you know, that made me want to try like every wheat beer I can get my hands on. I think that also is a good avenue for people to try. Like if you try, you know, an IPA or a wheat beer and you really like it, you know, like wheat beers are very approachable, especially this time of year. You know, if you try one and you really like it, then try another one and another one and another one. And by the time you get to another style that you like, you'll say, yeah, you know, I'm looking to find, you know, you'll know what you want to find in that style. And it's you'll know what it takes to really to explore a full style or a full group of styles, whatever.
Yeah, and it's not just the style like a wheat beer. I mean, that's a pretty broad style. I mean, the styles that you just mentioned, the difference between, you know, Dunkelweizen and just a Hefeweizen. But what was sort of interesting was through the Brewed Palate, you sort of, but through the book, you know, the Brewmaster's Table, it's like you focus in and you really learn that, oh, well, okay, there's the Bavarian wheat beer, and then, which is different from the German wheat beer, and which is different from the Belgian wheat beer. And then they all have their, even though it's basically the same style, the different yeasts and characteristics, you know, completely change the character of it. Of course, there's the grain differences from the different fields, different areas, different countries, obviously. So, you know, just in the same style, just a simple Hefeweizen or just a Weizen, you know, is different from those 3 countries.
Exactly. So that's just, you know, like we've been saying, there's like tons of avenues into craft beer or home brewing, no matter where you go. So, you know, don't, you know, put yourself down saying, you know, I can't pick out the flavors, or I'm not sure if I like X style, because, you know, that it only takes that one experience, you know, where you sit down in the right bar or you brew that one beer that really says, yeah, you know, I kind of can taste that little bit, the nuance in there, or, you know, or I kind of can taste that off flavor wherever it came from. So, it's really just what you make of it that, because craft beer is, while it's a community thing, it's also a very personal experience.
Yep.
So the more it is really whatever you make of it in the end of the day, and it's really, that's why I love sharing it, because it excites me so much that, that it gives me pride to like be able to take that and then share it with everybody, because I know that they'll appreciate what I contribute, and then I can show them how much I appreciate what they're contributing to help me continue being inspired to try new things.
Yeah, you made a good point there where, for example, you painted the picture of somebody in a bar, they tried a beer and he didn't quite like it. And it kind of relates back to what I was saying. It was, somebody who had tried a wheat beer in a bar and didn't like it. He's like, oh, I hate wheat beers. I'm never going to have a wheat beer again. But then again,
right.
Well, maybe that's just the Belgian wheat that you didn't like, and maybe that you actually really like a German Weizen or German Hefeweizen. So, yeah, I definitely try not to close my mind to specific styles of beers just because I didn't like that one. There are several different variations of just about every style.
Right. Because, and also another thing is it's the worst thing you could do is close yourself off to a style or a group of styles, because after you've tried a good amount of beers, there's like kind of a hierarchy that you create. Like, I like certain instead of saying I don't like the style, say, I can appreciate it, but it's not a go-to style. Like the really sweet, fruity beers aren't my favorite, but occasionally I'll find one that's, like an apricot wheat or whatever that's brewed by a brew pub or whatever, and I'll like it, and enjoy it, just in that situation. So never really close yourself off from a style, because craft beer is really about being open-minded. Even with anything creative, cooking, open to new flavor combos in your cooking, in your baking, or your brewing, or whatever other art form you're into. There's always, room to appreciate, and then, say, but my preference is X. So that's I find is the best way to go about it, is to learn to appreciate as many styles as you can. And then, okay, then in the end, it'll be okay if you say, yeah, my favorite styles are saisons, IPAs, imperial stouts, or whatever styles you like. But never really never shut yourself off from anything. After all, you could not like certain characteristics of a certain style, and then brew a beer with all the ones you do like, and then that'll be your house beer. So you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. It's like you said, the experience. Don't let the experience ruin basically your opinion of that beer style. And the experience often the time is related to food. Now, like you said, you're no stranger to food and beer, so it's interesting. So if you have the wrong beer with the wrong type of food, you might have a bad experience. But if you had that beer with the right kind of food for that beer, then it would have changed the experience completely.
Exactly. So, and drinking craft beer could make you into a foodie too. So, you'll be trying more. Before you know it, you'll be trying every craft beer and every pairing you can get your hands on. But yeah, it is. It's really, it's really just an awesome journey that it's like basically never ending. Whether it's beer or pairing it with food or just brewing it, whatever you want. Whatever you want to make at it.
So. Now, I'm under the impression that New Yorkers never leave New York, and when they do, they feel like they're out in the country. So, do you get out of New York much?
I grew up in New Jersey, but it would still like New York because it's like so close. But, I don't really, I can't say I would feel out of place per se. I mean, it's a different, New York is a very fast-paced lifestyle. So it is kind of, when I do go on vacations, kind of, I appreciate, the slowing down of life. Like, a couple of years, I think in like 2011, I went on a small road trip for a few days with a friend up to Maine and New Hampshire, and like Portland and Portsmouth, whatever that area, it's like Allagash, and it is like the pace of life is so slower, and it just feels good to like get away and and slow down for a bit. Like that's really what and I love living in New York, but the one thing that it puts a lot of stress on you is the fact that the pace of life is just always, you have to be going.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what was your last vacation? Where did you go?
Yeah, so my last vacation was when I went to California for a week. So
That's right.
It was mainly for a friend's wedding, but we took a few extra days to, visit a few breweries, drive around a little bit, go to the beach, So that, LA is still fast paced, but it was vacation, so, we weren't part of the hustle and bustle of the city, so.
But it's California. Everybody's out there, just chilling anyway.
Exactly. So it was definitely an awesome experience, especially. I mean, it was good to go to Stone, but my favorite brewery was The Brewery, which is in Placentia, California, which is known for their barrel aging. Their beers are just like mind blowing what they're doing there. They have like a 40 tap room and like this gigantic warehouse of like a barrel after barrel of this beer and that beer. And now they have a separate warehouse just for their sours, and which we didn't go to because it was like 3 miles from the brewery itself. But it's definitely, it's always like, some brewery tours are always the same one to the next, and then you find a brewery like The Brewery where they're doing so many cool things that like you just want to sit there at the tap room and try everything. Which you can't really do at the brewery because most of their beers are high alcohol, are really big. But
yeah, it's a good.
Let's just say let's just say my wife drove home from that one.
That's a safe good. So, what do you think about brewtubers? I mean, where should the brewtubers, what should the brewtubers community sort of think about doing? Are they? Is it where it should be? Should it grow? Should it change? Should it evolve? What do you think? What would you like to see more of?
I think. I just think that, the more it's really, if it, I really give it the blessing to grow, and I just want people who join it to really be dedicated to it, meaning that, like, because a lot of us have become friends, we chat on Facebook or Uvu, or Skype, whatever, or Google, wherever we chat, is to grow together as a community. We're all, inspiring each other to try new things. Puka NC, who brews a ton of IPAs, is finally brewing a sour because he saw other people, in the community who do so. And it's like, yeah, I'm finally going to take that step. But so it's really, to grow on one hand, but also to evolve and grow together as a community. And not as people who on occasion contribute a little bit here and there. I really want people, the people who are maybe less involved now to really try their best to give their all to the community, so that we can continue evolving together. Because I have my experiences in New York, which I can't always share 100% online, just because you go there and I say I'm going to film and you don't, because you're enjoying the experience. But the more we create an experience here online, and develop it together, the more depth it'll develop over time. And who knows, we could enter a beer into the National Homebrewers Competition that happens every year in the States, or any big national or international competition that happens as the Brewtubers Club, as our club. Instead of saying, oh, I'm entering the beer as a member of the New York City Homebrewers Guild, say, yeah, I'm a member of Brewtubers. Just the more we dedicate ourselves, the more pride we can develop as a community of international homebrewers.
Now, the Brewtubers website is already registered as a American Homebrewers Association club, so we can go ahead and do a collaboration and add that into a AHA homebrewing competition at any point.
Right. I actually posted an idea, but I didn't carry through with it at one point. Or I said like a contest called like Brewtubers Ale, and that I would judge it. But I think another cool thing we could do is like create a group of Brewtubers Ales or lagers, whatever we want, and like just like recipes that we like as a club, and that we can enter into competitions. Just whatever. Like it's just another idea. The more we collaborate with each other, the more we'll get to know each other, and based on talking and seeing videos, but also trying each other's beers.
Now, what do you think about using like the platform, using the SJ Challenge as a platform to determine, that best beer that then we eventually turn around and send into a competition? Instead of having
awesome.
Instead of having one person be the judge of which beer is gonna actually go, I mean, it's the world basically of homebrewers that decides.
Right. That could definitely be, a possibility. I could also see like winners in each country doing that, or each region, because like if you brew an IPA, even if you brew it again, by the time it gets overseas, it might not be as fresh or as brightly hoppy as you want it to be. So, there's a lot of flexibility with using competitions, like the SJ Pour Challenge, even if we have more than one throughout the year, like, 2 a year or whatever, just to enhance our camaraderie as a community, to help us grow. Not in really, the number, of course, we want more people to share online and post video, which is the best way because you get to see what you're doing. But just the depth of the community is what I'm really after, to really always trying new things, always collaborating, always contributing as much as you can,
So you're a heck of a contributor in this community. I mean, from the very beginning, from doing the video, and then all of your sharing with your experiences, getting your first all grain sort of equipment in the house and in the apartment, and then brewing up your first. I think it was a stout that you brewed first. Was that right?
Right.
And then you shared your mistakes. You shared all of the lessons learned. Your retrospective videos were useful and insightful. And then so your contributions really to the community really shine through, that you are a community member and want to be able to share all of those experiences, good and bad, so that we can all learn from each other. So I know that I really appreciate that, and I look forward to watching more of the Brewed Palate videos in the future.
Yeah, I of course, learn a lot from you, from your videos as well. Of course, one day I want to be able to have a house where I could have a bigger, more efficient system. But in the end of the day, like, just to sum up, a lot of the theme that we've been working, talking a lot about, it's all that you make out of it. You can create a beer that could win a competition like the SJ Pour Challenge on the simplest of homebrewing setups. Like, I have like a cooler, a brew pot, and a small temperature controlled fridge. Like, I don't have, a 15-gallon or more electric PID, system, but it's what you put into it. The more effort you put into developing your palate, your homebrewing skills, your practices, your adapting to what you can afford in terms of your equipment and, stuff like that. It's all about what you make out of it. So, I kind of, I guess end with like a wish or a blessing to like everybody in our community, or everyone who sees this, is to keep creating those new experiences, whether it's, getting into homebrewing, trying new things if you're already homebrewing, or if you're just a craft beer drinker who enjoys seeing people brew beer, at home, then keep creating new craft beer experiences. Go out to that new bar, start a conversation with a random bar patron or homebrewer at your homebrew shop. because the more experiences you create, the more, you'll appreciate what you've been establishing for yourself at home. When you're not in public, you'll be able to take it to your house and say, yeah, I do have a lot of knowledge and what to build upon. So, cheers to going forward and never stopping. I mean, I have my influences, in my local scene and people I tend to talk to online that are not part of our community, but I do want to thank, the whole community as a whole, but just the people who you are, like Tony and Puka and Nate, and like the people who I've really, and Dan AVA, who I've all the people I've gotten to know so far as close friends and role models and people I know I can go to, for advice on every day. If I see they're on Facebook, I jump on and, see if they're available to chat. So technically, I want to thank all the people I've started to get to know on a personal level for being available to me, whenever I need them. And I look forward to getting to know more and more of you guys on that level where, we're not only sharing videos and asking questions in the comments section, but we're actually becoming friends, and, I might be a therapist in profession, but, I can talk about beer and homebrewing and whatever you want, shoot the shit online, whatever, just because, we're a community now. We're not just a bunch of homebrewers. We're friends and homebrewers too. So,
yeah,
thank you to everyone who I have become friends with, and I look forward to becoming closer than just a fellow homebrewer with, you guys, so we can all know that, we're available to each other whenever we need something. So
that sounds great.
Cheers to that.
Thank you for all your contributions, and looking forward to more from the Brewed Palate. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.